This is the Human Services Transportation Advisory Committee for February 2025. Let's start with introductions online. So I'll call your name and then you can let us know your name and where you're from. And anything else you might want to say about why you're here. Michael, can you go first?
Yeah, I'm Michael Malika. I'm the Transportation Community Coach at Captain Community Human Services in East Glenville. I run the Saratoga County Transportation Task Force, and I just kind of wanted to get my ear in another group and kind of advance transportation access as a collective.
Super, thanks. Will you be here still at the end of the meeting?
Yeah, I'll be here. Yeah,
All right, because I wanted to just give a little update on the transportation task
of course.
force. Ethan?
Ethan Warren, Senior Planner, CDTA.
Thank you. I'll introduce Parker. He is a staff member at the Transportation Council here, and he's just filling in for Ethan, who's not here today. So he's helping with the notes and admitting people to the meeting. Adam?
Hi, my name is Adam Leach. I'm Program Director, Catholic Charities in Schenectady County.
Diane?
Diane Conroy Lasavita, Executive Director, Colony Senior Service Centers.
Katie?
Like me, Katie, or is there another Katie?
Sorry, Catherine, yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, hey, I'm Katie Carroll. I use she, her pronouns. I live and work in Albany, and I'm just visiting member of the public. I work with the Association on Aging in New York. Thank you.
Peggy?
Hi, I'm Peggy Osborne from the town of Bethlehem Senior Services.
And then call us back, okay? All right, thanks.
Thank you. Mary, are you able to unmute? Put it in the chat.
I'm just getting situated. So anyway, I'm Mary Foreman and I work with senior long-term care services in for Schenectady County.
Thank you. Kim? Back to Kim. Darcy?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Darcy Casey, Commissioner of Rensselaer County Department for the Aging.
Great, thanks for joining. Kim, are you able to unmute or put in chat where you're from?
Sorry about that. I thought I was unmuted. I'm Kim from Eddy Senior Care, Rotterdam, New York, Transportation Manager for a PACE program.
Great, thank you. And so then in the room, Angelina?
Angelina Searles. I'm the director with the Town of Colony Senior Resources Department.
I'm Bob O'Connell. I'm a volunteer with Captain Community Human Services.
Judy DeHoda Taylor, Deputy Director of Saratoga County Office for the Aging.
My name is Carrie Ward. I work at the Transportation Council here.
I'm Sandy Misowitz. I'm the Executive Director of the Transportation Council.
And I'm Mark Stiglione with the Regional Planning Commission.
Great. Thank you, everyone. So the first thing we have on our agendas now is public comment. So if there's anything anybody wants to say that's not about something that's already on the agenda, you're welcome to chime in now. And the next thing I had on the agenda was acceptance of prior meeting notes. I did already post those to the website because we need to finalize them before we have a chance to approve them now. So if you see anything on there that is incorrect, like the spelling of your name, Angelina, I see now is incorrect on there. If you see anything, please let me know and I can change it for the version that's on our website. But I did email those out to the group when I sent out the meeting notice. So with that, I am going to try to share my screen. Sandy, should I put the presentation on that screen and then share that?
Once you put it in presentation mode, the main will show up on that screen. And when you share it, you should be able to select this back screen up there.
In presentation mode, I can't see the chat.
Oh. The folks listening virtually, do you see the presentation slides?
Yeah, we can see them.
Great.
Awesome. Thanks. Do you want me to do the slide advancement?
Thanks. All right, well, thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. So I was asked by Carrie to brief you on where we're at in the development of our regional transportation plan. We talked about this at the Tools of the Trade. I think we introduced this topic to this group. Today I'm just going to give you a quick overview of where we're at and where things are going. I won't spend a lot of time on this. I just like to remind folks about our planning area that we include most of Saratoga County and all of Schenectady, Albany, and Rensselaer County. We, as an MPO, assign federal transportation funds to plans, programs, and projects that advance the ideas of basically the principles, strategies, and actions of our long-range regional transportation plan. So you'll also hear me refer to the regional transportation plan as a metropolitan transportation plan. That's the official language in law. The plans are required to be updated every 5 years and look out a 20-year horizon. Our current plan expires in September of this year. We're also responsible for developing a transportation improvement program, which is a 5-year program of capital projects. That one's updated every 3 years, and we're in the midst of updating that as well. And then we are also responsible as an MPO for developing a unified planning work program, which I would describe as our annual staff consultant-led planning initiatives that we do here. And we're actually out for public review on our new one for 2025 right now. But today I'm going to talk about the MTP, and I'll talk a little bit about the UPWP. So just a reminder, we had a long-range plan here for many years called New Visions 2050. We've rebranded it into the In Motion, the plan to 2050, for a couple of reasons. But one, just to bring some more attention to it. I think we've been talking about New Visions for my entire career here. So a rebrand was sort of needed to kind of refresh it a little bit. The plan derives or identifies a shared vision for transportation in our region. And again, talks about how we're going to invest our limited transportation funds. You know, what are our region's priorities? Why are we updating now? Well, aside from it being a federal requirement to update it every 5 years, there's a lot going on in our region. Saratoga County is one of the fastest growing counties in upstate New York. We've had just in this last month and a half, 2-month period, major investment announcements related to the Nanochip Tech Chip Lab in Albany, the Global Foundries investment up in Malta, and a proposal on the table for the state budget process for a $400 million investment in downtown Albany. So these are just some of many big economic development initiatives occurring in our region. So it's a good time for us to be developing this plan as we're starting to see this tech sector continue to grow in our region, as well as other types of economic development opportunities. Who implements this plan? Well, obviously the Transportation Council, we certainly have a major role, but our state and regional partners like the State Department of Transportation, CDTA, even groups like CDRPC, we all have a role in advancing the ideas of this plan. as do our municipal partners, counties and cities, towns and villages. It's not just the people who have voting membership here. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, that we all have a responsibility for implementing this plan. And how do we do that? For some of our state and regional partners, that means there's complementary transportation plans. Maybe it's a state transportation master plan, maybe it's a statewide pedestrian safety action plan. From CDTA, it's their transit development plan. But all of these complementary plans support and relate to our regional transportation plan and how we're guiding investment in the region. At a community level, zoning and local government regulations play a major role in how we implement this plan. Land use is an important piece to the puzzle, particularly related to the human services field, where we're seeing more dispersed development and seniors particularly wanting to live in the homes that they've always lived in, and how are we providing those transportation services. And then on the capital project side, there's various funding resources available for implementing different types of capital projects. And this plan just at least provides a framework for how we think we could invest in the plan's implementation. Next slide. Oh, I have to do this. Forgot. So the process, we've been working on this plan now for well over a year, maybe a year and a half. We kind of got delayed with some staff changes here, but it was intended to be a 5-phase process. The first phase really focused on sort of what we'll call data collection, just sort of assessing the existing conditions of the region. The second phase was sort of informing and kind of starting the public engagement process and trying to get input from the community on priorities for our transportation plan. We're in the midst of completing what we're calling the imagining phase, which really gets at looking at scenario planning and scenarios for the future and how we're going to think about transportation down the road. And then future phases include the one we'll be entering very soon, which is decision making. This is where we're really going to start defining and identifying strategies and actions for the plan, leading us to a draft document in June, which will be out for public review over the summer, and ultimately adopting the plan in September of 2025. This whole process has been guided by an in-motion task force comprised of about 25 to 30 members of the community representing different entities. Could be local government folks. We've got economic development stakeholders, transit folks, independent living centers, part of it. So we have a range of folks that are representing different perspectives on the task force. And because of the informed phase, it's really not just isolated to that phase. We're actually doing public involvement throughout the whole process. Oops. And as I said earlier, the plan will lay out all the policies and strategies that we're going to use to invest in transportation here. And the plan's website is inmotionplan.org. So phase 1, we wrapped up maybe about 6 months ago, where the major products that came out of that is a regional trend story map and a companion regional trends and conditions report. We also completed the congestion management plan and the coordinated human services public transit plan that this group is involved with. And, even back when we did the tools of the trade, the trends are probably not anything you're not unaware of. We have an aging population in our region. We continue to sprawl out. There's a number of factors that I won't go into today in the interest of time. But all of that information was pulled together and is being used in the development of, it has been used in the development of our goals, objectives, and our vision statement. We've also used this information to figure out how, develop some survey tools to get more feedback from the general public. And we've kind of gotten a number of great comments on all of these pieces that is leading us to some adjustments as we move forward. In terms of just a snapshot of some survey results, in terms of investing in infrastructure and where the public's priorities were in the context of this survey, you can kind of see that bicycle and pedestrian sort of active transportation facilities, providing more options for transportation, providing more frequent and reliable transit, a safer transportation system and simply maintaining, fixing roads and bridges as they are. Those kind of were universally the top priorities. Installing technology was not far behind as a priority. I think there's some folks that saw more opportunities to use technology in the future. Where we had a consensus on the opposite side, which is what not to invest in, or at least what should not be a priority, is building brand new roads and highways. That was seen as not something that would be worth investing in. And one of the things we're trying to do with our surveys is making sure that we're getting a good cross-section of the community to be part of the survey process and the plan process. So we're tracking demographic data to do that. This table shows a couple of variables: disability status, young adults, older adults, whether or not the person identified as Latino or Hispanic, non-white, whether or not they have access to broadband, or whether they are, and I'm sorry, this is covering up, there's some covering up the LEP, which is the limited English proficiency adults. And we calculated a regional prevalence, which is basically, of the population based on the census data, what percentage of folks in our region fit these different categories. And we try to match our survey respondents, because we collect this data if they're willing to volunteer it, to see how we're doing. And in this case, for the second survey, we lined up pretty well with the different variables. So we're getting a good cross section of the community to respond to these surveys. And we're also tracking zip code information. So we know just from a geographic perspective where the responses are coming from. So in terms of how we've been using all this information to build a vision and goals and objectives, I'll read the draft vision statement, and this is a work in progress. This is not set in stone. This is going to remain draft until we actually adopt it. But the draft vision statement reads, by 2050, we will strive to maintain a clean transportation system that provides safe, equitable, resilient, and reliable options for the movement of people and goods. The capital region will thrive with a seamless multimodal network that is community focused, connecting all people to economic opportunity while supporting sustainable growth and livable communities. Transportation investments will address inequities, improve system performance, adapt to technological advancements, and protect the environment for future generations. So that is the draft vision statement that we're actually trying to get feedback on right now in our current survey. And to complement that, we developed a series of goals and objectives. I won't read the objectives today because it's just too much information for this group meeting time period, I should say. But in terms of the broad goals, we identified 7 goals up front. One is safety, which is, again, simply to reduce or even eliminate fatalities and serious injuries on the roadway system. The goal of mobility, which is to make sure that the system is maintained, operated, and coordinated for reliable travel in the region. In terms of access, we want to make sure that there's improved transportation choices and access to key destinations for people and goods. There's a goal of equity to make sure that we're being as inclusive as we can and that disadvantaged populations are part of the process, but also that we can address some of the inequities of disadvantaged population when it comes to transportation investment from a historical perspective. The goal of livability, which is just to make strategic investments in the system to support economic development, population growth, and housing in areas with transportation options. And these last 2 goals, climate and resilience, we already made some adjustments, which is why I'm just showing you that, the feedback that we get does get used to refine these. And we felt goal 6 and 7 in particular needed some further clarification. So we updated them to say that for climate, reduce the risks the region faces from climate change, improve air quality, and reduce transportation system emissions. And the goal of resilience is to prepare for and protect transportation infrastructure from changing conditions and natural hazards, and responsibly adapt to transportation infrastructure for the use of future generations. So those are very broad goals. And then what we'll be doing over these next few months is developing strategies and actions to help us implement this vision and these goals. We as part of that work, the next phase really is the scenario planning and sort of imagining what we can do for the future. So there's a couple of components to that, the scenario planning and the needs assessment. In terms of scenario planning, if you're not familiar with that term, scenario planning is a process that helps prepare for multiple futures by imagining the possibilities. So it's a proactive approach to thinking about our future rather than just reacting to what a bunch of data says, right? It's trying to get ahead of like, this is where we would like to go. So it explores what's happening now, what could change, how it could change, how that would affect our region's future, and how that relates to strategies that we should be considering in the plan. And there's lots of ways to undertake scenario planning. The way we've approached it for this effort is we're using the exploratory scenario planning tool, which is endorsed by the Lincoln Institute for Land Policy and the American Planning Association, but it's a way to explore scenarios in a world of uncertainty. And, we certainly have a lot of uncertainty, whether it's now, and if we had the crystal ball of where we'll be by 2050, we probably would be not sitting in this room right now. But, the idea here is it allows us to explore these different alternatives to help identify what those common themes are in terms of driving forces, and also what are some of those common themes in terms of the uncertainties, what aren't we sure about. So with our InMotion task force, we had a little internal workshop just to gain an understanding of sort of the benefits, the costs, the trade-offs of different investments and policies related to a series of scenarios, with the idea of trying to identify what are some of the most likely strategies that would work across any scenario, whether it's no changes at all to really big changes. And some of the driving forces we reviewed include development, how the region continues to build, the role of technology in our lives, thinking about carbon reduction and adaptation, and also the possibility of actual population growth. What if the region grew to 1 million people? What would that mean? What would that look like? What would that feel like? So our task force picked to kind of do a deeper dive into the topics of development and technology and how those interrelate. And in doing so, we looked at 5 planning scenarios. One is called regional momentum, which I would refer to as sort of the status quo. The region continues to build and develop out the way it is right now with the same level of technology investment, just sort of the status quo scenario. The other 4 scenarios were tied to a higher level of dense development versus more sprawling development, and then a lower level of technology integration versus a very high level of technology integration. And in those 4 scenarios, in addition to the 5th, we started to look at and see some common themes. Amongst them, there definitely needs to be some flexibility with infrastructure. We don't want to commit to any one thing because, as we know, with even our own cell phones, technology can change overnight. So we want to make sure that whatever we're investing in has some amount of flexibility so that it can adapt to changing conditions in the future. There's no doubt that in all of those scenarios that we want multimodal options. Certainly those options increase with the more dense scenarios, but there's a clear theme even in a more sprawling scenario that people want trails, people want to be able to walk to things. So we want to make sure, and certainly for public transit and seniors, we want to make sure that we can connect folks to their appointments and shopping and all of these services. So having those multimodal options is important. Encouraging more regional coordination. Sometimes we all work a little bit in isolation. In a home rule state, you have community 1 working, maybe not with their neighbors as much as they could. So how can we better coordinate regionally? There was this theme of resilience, increased flooding, and the weather changes we're experiencing here. And what does that mean for infrastructure? How do we make the system more resilient to these higher changes, particularly flooding, even heat, when you're waiting for a bus, out in extreme heat? How are we adapting to that? The topic of equity comes up in many different themes, making sure that, again, we're as inclusive as we can and making sure that access to jobs is considered, particularly for marginalized populations. Again, technology integration, the group was pretty much split on which way we're going with technology. Some see it as it's just going to be everywhere, all over. Some see it as it won't integrate as fast as some of us think. But I think there's no doubt it's going to change. So how we think about that will be interesting. There was also the desire for more integration of transportation land use planning, making sure that where we are developing, particularly in our, outer ring suburbs or maybe in our rural areas, that there are maybe nodes of activity where you can do a different kind of development that would support services or at least provide enough density so that whether it's a transit option or some other scenario, that node of activity can be connected to the broader region. And, maintaining economic viability no matter what happens. So these were the themes that kind of came out of the workshop, and will be used to help meet our goals, and we'll be developing strategies that help support these themes. And then we're also developing what's called a needs assessment, and a needs assessment in our language is we're reviewing all of the infrastructure. So think your physical roads, your bridges, your trails, your sidewalks, your transit vehicles. We're actually looking at the condition of all of those things and projecting out where we have the data available to establish what the future replacement cost of all that might be. And as you can imagine, it's pretty high, right? So what we reviewed is maintenance needs for the highway network, particularly for the pavement and the bridges, the replenishment of CDTA's transit fleet, and we looked at the CDTA fleet in kind. We did not at this point consider electric vehicles, and I'll show you why in a minute. And we also looked at our recent solicitation for capital projects, just as a proxy to see what the communities were submitting so that we had some idea of what their local priorities are. And just in the interest of the time, I won't run through all of the asset classes, but I just pulled transit and active transportation because I thought those would be of most interest to this group. And in terms of the CDTA fleet, if we were to replace the CDTA fleet at its current size, with the same types of buses we're using today, the cost estimate out to 2050 would be $410 million. That's even based on 2022 vehicle costs, which we're actually getting updated information from CDTA because those are actually low. They've actually gone up. The thing to point out with the electric buses, which are the 40-foot buses right now, and versus the hybrid 40-foot buses versus just the regular, we'll call it fueled 40-foot buses, is the cost. Electric bus is almost double the cost of the other two. So, given that we have a climate law here in New York and there's a sort of a mandate from the state to convert fleets over, it would be very difficult to do in a cost-effective way in today's environment. So, we're going to be looking at what that ZEV scenario is, or the zero emission vehicle scenario, because maybe it's not electricity, maybe it's some other fuel. And how do we account for that possibility in the plan? These figures also don't consider facilities for CDTA, replacing transit stations and even thinking about the Amtrak stations that they own, the garages that they own. So we're not even considering those in this assessment. But you can see the replacement costs are quite high to 2050. And then we don't have as much historic data on active transportation facilities. And I think one of the recommendations of our plan is going to be getting better data collected on active transportation facilities in the region. But what information we do have is we estimate there's approximately 70 miles of on-road bicycling facilities today, 44% of which we think were installed before the year 2018. So at least we know that much. But there's a good chunk of the system that's been installed since 2018. If we assume a 20 or 30-year useful life, it probably is longer than that, but eventually those facilities need to be replaced as well. For on-road, we rely, of course, on the fact that they're on paved streets. So on-road facilities really tie into the pavement conditions, more so than other data because of the nature of an on-road facility. And then in terms of the spread of the types of facilities we have, it's kind of buffered bike lanes, and bike lanes are starting to catch up to the Sharrow and probably will exceed the Sharrows in the region in the not too distant future. We don't have as much mileage yet for cycle tracks, but we're starting to build more protected or at least semi-protected facilities than we have in the past. And
What is a Sharrow?
a Sharrow is a shared lane, shared use facility. Sharrow is just the nickname for the symbol that's on the roadway. But we're moving away from the shared facilities more to, like I said, the protected more and more, particularly bike lanes. So I suspect we'll see more of that in the future. In terms of off-road trails, we estimate there's 163 miles of off-road trails, 98% are paved asphalt, but we have no records on their condition. And asphalt obviously doesn't last forever. So we need to think about what's maintaining that going to look like in the future. And then we have 4,400 miles of sidewalks in the region. By our best estimate, 52% of those sidewalks are what we call good condition, at least for the data we have. 24% of those sidewalks are in excellent condition, which tells me we have varying ages of sidewalks in the region, and probably the newer ones are the ones in better shape. We probably have a lot of very aged sidewalks, particularly in our urban centers. So how again do we go about maintaining these over time? What's that level of investment looking like? So the needs assessment and the scenario planning, we're looking to wrap up in this next month or two. We're doing some modeling now and some additional work to kind of round out both of those initiatives. We have a survey open right now that focuses on the vision statement and some opinions about trade-offs. So what would you be willing to trade off in exchange for something else is the line of questioning in the survey. We'll be preparing, like I said, plan strategies and actions moving forward, as well as a financial plan. So with the limited resources we have, how do we make progress in all of this? And the draft plan should be released for public review in June. And then, so for you folks, what can you do? How can you get involved in this process? Follow us on social media, and you guys can help us spread the word about the plan and opportunities to provide input. If you want to subscribe to our e-newsletter, that would be another way to stay up to date on the latest going on with the plan. Because certainly between now and June, there'll be a lot of work, and the big public draft report will be available, as I said, in June. So you may want to stay tuned that way. Obviously, you can complete surveys, and the third survey is open now, and you can access it on our website, inmotionplan.org. And if you're representing a group today, invite us to community meetings. We're happy to come and talk about the plan, get feedback from your members. And that will all be used to inform the planning process. And with that, that is all I had about the long range plan and where we're at. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Wow. Fabulous.
Thank you. It's a lot of work. Our staff's been working really hard, like I said, for a while to start building this. And now we're really getting into the heart of the strategies and actions for the plan. And that's where the coordinated plan that you folks contributed to will be used to inform this process, because that plan developed recommendations, and we're going to be looking at those recommendations in the context of all of this to see how we can fit things in and how we can frame additional planning work that might need to be done, or anything else that can be supportive of the issues that you folks care about and are involved in your work lives.
Any questions from online?
No, there's no questions.
Stop sharing.
Yeah, we can pull up the WP ones later at the end.
So the next thing that I have on the agenda is updates, and the first thing I had was news around the table. In the room, is there any updates from your organization that you would like to?
We completed population projections by age cohort through 2050. If anybody's interested in seeing that, the data is on our webpage, cdrpc.org, under data.
What are the age cohorts?
They're the standard ones that the census uses to break down demographic.
Where are the most old people?
Yeah, old people are growing, lots of old people. And younger people are shrinking.
And what's the source of that?
The US Census,
Oh, yeah,
the decennial census.
through your organization.
They do great maps and colors and I love it. It's my favorite place to go.
Oh, good.
I know it is, and I use it all the time.
Good, glad.
Sorry.
We are having a training coming up towards the end of March on our Capital Region Indicators website to explain folks how to use it in your day-to-day work, grant applications. And we'll also be doing a little bit on how to use the census's website directly, data.census.gov.
Can anyone get on the trainings?
Yep, there'll be live and there's gonna be remote options. Sign up form is just pending my review.
But it will be on your website.
Yeah, there'll be a sign, we'll send an email blast, it'll be on our website. And save the date end of March 26th, I think.
And Carrie, can you be able to send it to the group?
Yeah.
I would love to.
Can you make sure?
Thank you.
Sure.
Anything else from in the room?
All right.
The immensity of what you just presented, one of the many things that goes on in Captain and our little transportation programs, Care Links and Wellness Van that's supported by the County Office for the Aging and various towns in Half Moon and Clifton Park. You know, we're all providing a lot of senior transportation. But you know, recently I showed up with one person at the VA hospital and the Saratoga County VA person showed up in the same unit. I mean, we think how often we see the Clifton Park van going down the Northway, one person in it. So I mean, we recently had a group get together to see what it is which we can try to coordinate. How do we coordinate? And it's funny, I recently had a conversation with Diane Conroy Laslavita, and she told me about access, which we never knew about access. That's going on through CDTA. And they have software. And, you know, software could be one easy way to begin to coordinate something. So, I mean, we're just trying to think about how we proceed in that kind of a vein.
Yeah, and the technology piece is a great example of what we're talking about. I mean, we've advanced so much in scheduling all kinds of things. You know, think about an Uber app, for example, you know, but in the context of these services, you know, there's probably lots of different tools now. And that could be further explored to coordinate.
While this grant opportunity just closed, the Department of State every year has an annual call for local government efficiency grants, and they focus on projects just like as you're saying. They have two categories: planning, which it sounds like if you want to get a grant to explore some specifics, pulling people together to figure out how it's going to work for Saratoga or otherwise. And there's also implementation, which could be used to actually buy potentially vehicles. Which they do for like ambulance services and other agencies.
Biggest area of transportation that lacks transportation is the disabled population who is not on Medicaid. That's your biggest, that is the biggest hole in transportation. Anybody get a ride anywhere, trust me, do it all day long. but for the disabled who are wheelchair bound, who do not have access to STAR, do not have access to any sort of Medicare or Medicaid, excuse me, yes. That is where the lacking of transportation is. It's very expensive to hire an ambulance or a private company to take them. That's where the lack of it is. Anywhere else, not really.
Hi
At
there.
least in my opinion.
I just wanted to chime in and just give an update on behalf of Department of Aging. We are currently waiting for four new passenger vans that we were able to obtain from stimulus funding that was going to lapse. So they are on the assembly line as we speak. And we just purchased a brand new wheelchair van as well for our medical program. The medical program is, I think Kayla has about 700 clients now that, we're transporting. And we also were a recipient of a grant with the state for Go-Go Grandparent. And they gave us, very generous grant. Right now we're on hold with that because we utilized all the funding, but they said they're going to do another round as well. And we found that very beneficial, for taking those to treatments and, and then just, it really worked out a lot. We utilized the Go-Go Grandparents immensely. So, and we did open our transportation back up to Rensselaer, East Greenbush, our new center. So that's building up slowly, but the intention is to have a van at all the new centers as well and get our transportation back up to where it was prior to COVID.
Thank you.
This Mary Foreman, I can also comment on Go-Go Grandparent, but we did not have the same result as Rensselaer County. We contracted with Go-Go Grandparent last year, and a lot of our seniors were just not comfortable with the Uber and the Lyft and who's coming to pick me up. So we had a conversation with Go-Go Grandparent, and we said, well, give us a couple years and there might be a change in folks' perception of the system and go from there. Maybe we'll get another contract.
Katie?
Is it all right if I share two things?
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks. First up, because it happens locally here, the Aging Concerns Unitas Conference will be June 24th and 25th. Folks can register on the agingny.org website, and we will be at the Desmond Hotel again this year. And I believe there should be a couple sessions related to transportation in the lineup, but we're still working on the actual agenda of the sessions that will be offered. And then the second item, another grant whose deadline has passed already, but the Council on Developmental Disabilities, so another statewide body, they recently held they had a grant opportunity open for application focused on transportation. I'm aware of one application to that grant program, so I'm just sharing that with folks. I'm interested to see like what comes out of that. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Katie, what was the name of that? I'm sorry.
The Council on Developmental Disabilities did they opened that grant opportunity, and then it closed it closed on Friday, but it was focused on transportation.
The New York State Council, right?
Yes. It used to be called the DDPC, or Developmental Disabilities Planning Council. Folks may know it by that name, but its new name is Council on Developmental Disabilities.
Anybody else?
Has anybody heard of the grants that were approved on 24 and 25 years? We got the approval letter, but still haven't heard anything from DOT.
The 5310 grants?
Yes,
Anybody else get one of those and heard anything beyond the approval letter? I haven't seen anything beyond that either.
We have an inquiry into the main office of DOT for an update on the status of some of those vehicles, so we're waiting to hear information as well.
thank you.
Yeah, I don't think, oh, sorry. Healthy Alliance, we were also waiting to hear from them on any updates, but they haven't heard anything either.
I can share that if you worked with Tom Vaughn, he did retire at the end of the calendar year last year. I just got a notification about that, so they may be in staff transition over there, which,
Yeah, I think that's kind of why there's everything's kind of slowing down a little bit.
yep.
Other things that I had seen and flagged, was that the NISOT, the New York State Department of Transportation's solicitation for the, FTA, Federal Transit Administration, Section 5311, which is formula grants for rural area program. Was out recently, it's due tomorrow, actually. And it is for rural areas, which are not urbanized areas, which is a little bit confusing, but does include more rural areas of our 4 counties. The latest update that I have still on upcoming solicitations for the 5310, the enhanced mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities, is still that the next one is expected out this fall. So it probably, I would assume, later in the fall. I have been trying to find updates on the master plan for aging and the Olmsted plan update. There were staffing, like relatively high level staffing changes on both of those. I did get an update from somebody on this distribution list, that the master plan for aging is expected to be submitted to the governor's office by tomorrow-ish. And then a final report is likely mid-February with a public release, maybe in mid-April for that. I put those two under the MISC meeting here, because I'm thinking maybe there will be some updates available or referenced at that meeting, so I'm planning to attend that. It is also virtual, if you want to, listen into it on February 11th from 1 to 3. The in-person location is in the Empire State Plaza. The Saratoga County Transportation Task Force has continued and is still having conversations. Michael, did you want to provide an update on where that group is at?
Yeah, I can. So the grant that we got from the United Way that kind of kickstarted everything, we operated out of a national framework called Communities of Excellence. It's kind of a breaking down into both a Luminosity report and their Shine program. So that's coming to a close. So we're doing a report out for them, hoping to kind of be a model for more kind of projects like this in the future. We're waiting to hear back from CDPHP, didn't want to mess up the acronym, but we put in for a grant with them to create a community transportation project to kind of get, I think we already have the vans, but it would pay for the drivers and consistent service for 3 days out of the week to kind of bolster our Wellness Express program and our CareLinks program. Just kind of waiting to hear that coming down the pipeline. And we're really excited to see kind of more developments in Saratoga, especially around Saratoga Springs. I went to the Vision Zero workshop that uh, you guys put on 2 weeks ago, I believe. And I'm really excited to see where kind of more changes like that play out in Saratoga.
And then the next two things I have on here are just updates on the pedestrian infrastructure related transition plan. So that's the analysis of the existing conditions of pedestrian infrastructure in accordance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. In the city of Rensselaer, that plan, I linked it on the agenda. It's available online. It's in their library. At least I'm not sure if it's definitely in the library. If they are the city council workshop, I think is hearing a presentation of it tonight. And then on Wednesday, they're gonna announce, or they're planning to announce that there will be a public hearing. February 19th, I believe. So the idea is if it goes well, they would be adopting that in February 19th. We are still working on ones for Manans, the village of Manans and the towns of Wilton and also Clifton Park. And then should be adding another location to our work plan for next year, which isn't finalized yet, but Albany County applied to us to do a county-wide one. So we would actually be collecting condition data under the ADA anyways for the trails with a transportation function in Albany County. And then the Capital Region Vision Zero Safety Action Plan, which Michael just referenced, he was referencing a workshop we did in Saratoga Springs, looking at kind of the area around Caroline Street. And how the roadway infrastructure there could be improved to enhance safety. We are doing another one of those, looking at Eastern Avenue in the city of Schenectady this Wednesday from 4 to 7 p.m. It's open to the public. Anybody can come. We'll be at the Renaissance Square Community Room. And then February 26th, we'll be having one in the city of Albany at the Pine Hills Library, looking at kind of a square around the Albany High School, so Washington Avenue down to Western Avenue. Potential improvements that could be made to those roads. That's all I have. Any questions on the Jamie question? Oh.
Carrie, can you repeat where you're going to be in Schenectady?
Renaissance. I think it's called Renaissance Square. It's near Irving Street. I want to say it's 104 Irving Street, but I'm not.
Irving?
Yeah,
Like the man. Okay.
It's on Eastern. It's a building on Eastern Avenue. I think the side street is Irving, so the address is that. There's a development, like it's a newish building. It's called Renaissance, and they have a community room in there.
And that's Wednesday?
Wednesday, yeah, and I think it's actually 4:30 to 7:30.
Okay, thank you.
So I can join a Zoom meeting.
Okay. Just one last thing before we part. Amongst the many other things I mentioned at the beginning about our Unified Planning Work Program, so that document is out for public review as well right now, which lists all of the planning activities we intend on undertaking next year. I'll just share with you, if you'd like to review the document, it's available on our website. I put a shortcut link here. It's tinyurl.com/2025 UPWP. You can review the document. There's a survey. We're going to have an open house here in the office on February 11th from 4 to 6 p.m. If you're interested in stopping by and talking about transportation planning. We're also having a lunch and learn on February 6th, which was omitted from the slide. Apologize for that. At noon, if you want to learn more about what's in our UPWP and our work plan. And you can always submit comments to us via email, info@capitalandpo.org. In terms of like the new activities, Carrie mentioned the ADA project for Albany County. We're also doing a Complete Streets project up at Saratoga Springs on West Avenue. We'll be working with Albany County again on a Complete Streets effort in a couple of locations throughout the county. And we'll be working with, thank you, Boston Spa, the Village of Boston Spa, on a, what I'll call a more of a safety initiative. It's a village-wide traffic safety, traffic calming plan. So it'll look at crash data, it'll look at strategies to reduce the speed limit in the village, and also look at strategies to just slow people down on the roadway network. So those are sort of our planning studies that we'll be undertaking. A lot of our workload this year, though, will be spent on completing our long-range plan, completing the Vision Zero plan that Carrie's been working on. And kind of catching our breath. There's a lot going on at the federal level, as you can imagine. So, you know, we're just going to try to keep up with all of that and adjust where we need to, and go from there.
Catherine had a question, I think referring to the safety action plan. She asked if one of those events has a walking tour portion.
Oh, yeah, sorry, they all do. I might have to send the details out in an email afterwards, but there's 2 walking tours at each of them. I don't remember exactly what the times are. But they'll be walking, you know, more or less the corridor that is the focus area, so, but they might not be walking the whole thing, so it'll be kind of dependent on who shows up and what locations those people wanna focus on. But yeah, there will be 2 walking tours, led by our consultant staff on the project at both Schenectady and Albany. Anything else before we wrap? Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, May 5th at 2 p.m. With that, have a great afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.